The underground street racing community is made up of some daring individuals who, by doing something that the law doesn't exactly sanction, have found a way to make their living by just being the fastest on the tracks. This takes up some courage, and J.J. Dayboss from Street Outlaws seems to be one of the notable characters in this trend. Born Jonathan Day, he has been on the street racing scene for decades and is still poised to make more appearances. However, he has often been on the news over the years, mostly for really unpleasant reasons, which might have taken a toll on his career. So what really happened to J.J. Dayboss? As a young boy, Jonathan Day wasn't originally on the career path of becoming a racer, but there had been family members with a history of racing, pushing Jonathan to hone his skills on the tracks at every opportunity he got. Over the years, this enthusiasm has been paying off, as Jonathan has become one of the fastest people on the tracks of one of the most popular street racing shows, Street Outlaws, and takes charge of activities in one of the spin-offs, Street Outlaws, Memphis. Jonathan was born on the 10th of August, 1973, in Memphis, Tennessee, in the United States. He was born to the family of Barbara and David Day. His father, David, had a history of racing, but the family was into the roofing business as at the time Jonathan was growing. With little to no option, Jonathan had to join the business to help his family make a living. But it turned out that Jonathan just had his eyes on something else and was using the roofing business as a means to an end, as he invested his own proceeds from the business in getting a racing car for himself. His story is that of a young man trying to push the limits by doing everything possible to live his dreams, no matter how expensive that dream was. Up until he was 20, he had to stay around helping with the family business, but had to take a different turn when he got the money he needed to get his own race car. Before then, even, he was growing popular with the street racing community in their neighborhood, where he became a beast behind the wheel, beating most of his opponents in their own game. Jonathan has always been a character right from the beginning. He was popular for adopting some unconventional tactics in defeating his opponents. Take, for instance, when the countdown was used at the start of the races, Jonathan would likely step on the pedal at the count of 2 and often did come out at the top after each race. He was becoming the king of the street. However, according to available details, Jonathan might not just have been making the right decisions in his life when he was younger. He had ended up in prison at a younger age where he spent a little over 8 years. Knowing Jonathan, he has an aggressive character, which comes in handy during races, but won't be a plus to him in real life. No one is sure what the exact nature of his crime was, but news has gotten out that Jonathan wasn't exactly living as he should have earlier. He might have been involved in gambling and other illegal activities right until he got taken in and sentenced. Since he got out, however, he has made quite an effort to see that he makes amends and makes the best out of his life. Time and again, we have seen him lose his cool, which landed him in another legal issue later on, but he has been trying to keep things together. His move to become a well-known figure must have played a part in helping him watch his attitude over the years. It won't be a pleasant sight if he is caught up in scandals. With his transition into street racing, he had to find a means to make a living. Let's be honest, street racing isn't exactly a cheap venture. Talk about the cost of getting the cars and boosting them to be at least 1,000 horsepower. And not just that. There is a reason street racing remains illegal in most places. Racers are likely to get in crashes that might total their cars. This means that you also have to be ready to fix them up when such things happen. To find a way around this, Jonathan started buying cars, fixing them up or enhancing them, and selling them back to other racers. With this, he has built a business that keeps running to this day. Despite not having the push he had needed earlier on, he succeeded in making a mark on the tracks in Memphis and has since secured a reputation as the king on the tracks. Jonathan Day's luck started to look a lot more promising in 2018 when he was approached by the producers of the original Street Outlaws, who pitched the idea of Street Outlaws, Memphis, to him. And considering the place of street racing in the face of the law, he was initially skeptical about the whole arrangement. The show did have some issues with the NHRA in the beginning, as they cited safety concerns, and the precedent such a dangerous venture could set at the time, especially due to the fact that some of the racers who got drafted for the show had NHRA licenses. However, the producers were able to skip this hurdle and started the show, which immediately became a hit. While growing up, Jonathan was part of this street racing community in his neighborhood, where they would come together on the weekends to race. This little community got drafted into the show as well. Given their history, Street Outlaws. Memphis is popular for promoting the idea of family, which is at the foundation of the group. This also provided some unique approaches to their racing activities. Even in families, there are bound to be issues from time to time, but instead of throwing punches, they will often take to the tracks to settle their old rifts. This contributed to the growth of their fan base, as many people got drawn by the originality that they saw. Even before Street Outlaws, street racing has always been more about the ego of the racers. It is a constant struggle for who would be crowned the king of the streets. This brings in some trash talks off the tracks and aggressive racing events. It's true that most of the races had prize money at stake, but being feared on the tracks was deemed a necessity. This is the reason racers like JJ Dayboss will do anything possible to come out at the top. Over the years, he has become known for his aggressive racing style, which was a nightmare to the other racers. As much as being fast on the tracks is necessary, being able to work on the psyche of your opponents is still very much an important skill. This way, you could win the race even before it starts. Jonathan knew this and was willing to take advantage at every point. The show started airing on the Discovery Channel in 2018 and has since propelled everyone who has been part of it into a local celebrity status. The popularity of the show continues to grow and has given rise to several other spin-offs. And just so you get the sense of the bond that exists among the racers, Jonathan is currently married to Trisha, who has been with him on the tracks, even before Street Outlaws came knocking. He was the one that introduced Trisha to the tracks, and she has been loving it ever since. She has become one of the few females who have made it to the show, and serves as an inspiration to every other female who might be looking to hone their skill in racing. Trisha Day has also been a spectacular racer, despite getting her first driving lessons from Jonathan when she was already in her 20s. She has earned the name Midget on the tracks, owing to her small figure. But make no mistake, her size isn't to be taken for granted, as she has faced some of the most skilled racers in the game and has come out on top. Jonathan and Trisha have 4 children together, adding to the children that Jonathan has from his previous relationships. Not much detail is known about his previous marriage, but he has admitted in an interview that Trisha has been really supportive in raising the family. In total, Jonathan has about 11 children, with 4 being from Trisha. The family is still growing as grandchildren are starting to come into the picture. Despite both husband and wife being committed to their first love, which is racing, they have managed to also build a life outside the tracks. For the fact that a time will come when they might have to take a bow from street racing, having something to fall back on, which will make life worth living, isn't totally a bad idea. That wasn't the only bond that Jonathan has made over the years. Both Jonathan and Trisha are known to be really close with Precious Cooper, whom they have shared the thrills of the tracks with since they were younger. At some point, it seemed that Precious was the one Jonathan was dating, but he later clarified that they had just been good friends all along. Precious is even the godmother to one of Jonathan's and Trisha's children, which is proof that they still share a really close bond. Street Outlaws, Memphis continues to gain more fans as the show progresses, which is a little more of an achievement given the fact that the show was expected not to make it this far, especially due to safety concerns. Speaking of safety concerns, Jonathan has gotten a fair share of the dangers of street racing in his career, both while on track and off it. It has been a source of growing concern for fans, who thought they had lost one of their favorites at intervals. Following the challenges that the show faced with the NHRA, racers on Street Outlaws had to adopt certain safety standards, which would save both the racers and the spectators in the event of a mishap. This might have just been the reason Jonathan is still alive to this day. His experience hasn't been all fun throughout his career. J.J. Dayboss got in his first accident just the year before Street Outlaws. Memphis aired. Note that this accident occurred off the tracks and could have been a lot worse for Jonathan. According to the information made available to the public, he was driving to Arkansas when the accident happened. Some accounts have it that he was hauling some other vehicles when he fell asleep behind the wheel, with the vehicle going about 55 miles per hour. He probably was tired after a night race event or working overtime to get a car fixed. Whatever the reason was, the car went off the road and hit a concrete culvert. This accident wrecked his car and left Jonathan with some bruises, one broken hand, and some injuries to the rib. Overall, he was able to make a quick recovery from that accident and was back on track. Indeed, this accident wasn't on the racing tracks, but the burnout that comes with these racing activities, owing to the adrenaline rush that racers have in the show, might have been a major factor in the accident. This accident might have been a big deal at the time, but Jonathan had no idea that he had something bigger waiting for him in the future. This next accident sent shivers down the spine of everyone that saw it, as it seemed to be the end of both Jonathan and his wife, Tricia. It would have been a really sad day for the Days. Fast forward to 2022, when Jonathan and Tricia were scheduled to take part in one of the spin-offs of Street Outlaws, America's List. They both got in an almost fatal crash. Jonathan was able to get away from it with some minor injuries, but for Tricia, it was something a whole lot more intense. Everything seemed to be in order on that day, as husband and wife prepared to take on each other on the tracks. Their fans were really looking forward to the results of the race at the end. Everyone wanted to know if Tricia had what it takes to beat J.J. Dayboss, who has built quite a reputation in racing. Other racers were afraid to take him on, because he was really aggressive on the tracks, and beating that would take quite an effort. Well, at the beginning of the race, it seemed Tricia had a good start and was ahead in the race. But everything went to hell really quickly. Midway into the race, Jonathan might have just pushed his car too hard, trying to catch up and beat his wife to the chase, because the car bursts into flames and got him disoriented for a while. Maybe in a bid to avoid getting burned, Jonathan's car got directed off his track and went straight towards Tricia. In a split second, Tricia's car was flying towards the vans that were lined up as a protective cover for the expensive equipment that was being used to film the show. On crashing into Tricia, Jonathan's car was able to get a hold, but that story was different for Tricia. Both of them were hurriedly pulled out of the wreck and were sent to the hospital. We later learned that Jonathan came out with fewer injuries and was able to get on his feet within weeks. But Tricia had to undergo hip surgery and had a recovery period of up to 6 months. During the recovery phase, the couple was open about their situation, and we once saw a video that Tricia made showing that Jonathan already working on a car in the garage. He certainly wasn't one to give up just yet. Eventually, both of them made a full recovery and are back on the show. They have decided to take on fewer roles, though, as they try to ease in and not do anything too dangerous for the moment. Many believed that it would even be advisable that one or even both of them should consider doing something less dangerous. But it doesn't seem that JJ DeBoss has found any other place where he can channel energy. Remember that legal issue we talked about earlier in this video? Well, Jonathan lost his cool at some point in the show and got hit with a suit as a result. The case involved him and another racer who claimed that Jonathan's actions threatened his life, and he was suing for a $5 million compensation and $500,000 in damages. The case was between JJ DeBoss and his fellow racer Chad Larkin. It turned out that one of the trash talks that we usually see the racers engage in before races took a different turn when there was a gang-up against the Missouri racer Chad. This resulted in Chad suing Jonathan, Discovery Inc., Pilgrim Media Group, and Street Outlaws, Memphis. The TV channel and producers of the show got roped in the whole issue when Chad accused them of watching as Jonathan and his crew descended on him, hitting him all over his body. He said that during this altercation, he feared for his life as it seemed they were out to take his life. He said that instead of the producers doing something to stop the attack, they just watched as the whole thing escalated. This won't be the first time producers of reality shows are being accused of just standing by and watching things go wrong, while they try to capture shots they believe will help boost the show's views. The whole thing became even crazier when Chad said that as the producers weren't ready to do something, his wife, Jenny, who is also into racing, tried to separate the fight, but got pulled away by her hair by another female racer with Street Outlaws. The whole issue started when Jonathan got angry with a trick played by an opponent, resulting in heightened emotions and an exchange of words. One thing led to another, and all hell broke loose. Chad left that encounter with a chipped front tooth, busted lip, black eye, herniated disc, and a turn-left meniscus. Luckily enough, he made a full recovery. Such an event must have been a result of Jonathan letting his old self get the best of him, since after his prison time, he has been making efforts not to get on the bad side of the law again. Hopefully, we won't be hearing of such encounters again. Despite his shortcomings, Jonathan is really good at racing and has been doing well as the host of Street Outlaws, Memphis. He hasn't been as active as he used to be since his last accident, but is still very much part of the team. We just have to understand that it will take some time for him to ease back in after such a traumatic experience. People would even understand if he decided to retire at this point. However, the man keeps pushing, and we are looking forward to seeing what he will be doing in the future, and we wish him luck in all he does. That will be all on this episode, and we hope you gained some insights into the life of Jonathan Day, aka JJ DeBoss. Let's know your thoughts in the comments, and do stay in touch for more videos.